Ah, Neon Genesis Evangelion, the magnum opus of 90s anime, the journey all weebs must take to prove their worth. Now I, like many, was ecstatic to hear that Netflix had acquired the rights to legally stream this incredible series. HD quality and wide-range availability, in addition to letting the general public learn more about the foundations of modern anime, it sounded like a dream, but like all dreams, we must wake up from them. Unfortunately, this is more along the lines of a waking nightmare, because Netflix did the impossible and somehow messed up Neon Genesis Evangelion. That may be a bit of an exaggeration, but there are still some major screw-ups made throughout the entire process that has led to a very less than desirable outcome. From a production perspective, this new era of EVA has been riddled with dishonesty. First off, the very rational assumption that Netflix would be bringing over the original dub for streaming was voiced by many of the fans, and yet, for some reason, they decided not to? I quite honestly don't see the advantage in doing this, unless you're confident enough to have an entirely more positive outcome than the original. But the original dub isn't terrible, and the new dub isn't much of a step up. My assumption is that they were attempting to try to create something higher quality, but all they've done is isolate original dub fans and provided an, in my opinion, not exactly satisfactory performance all around. You might want to take that sentiment with a grain of salt, as for my Evangelion experience, I watched it subbed, so hearing English come out of any of these characters' mouths feels a little bit off. I thought Asuka did alright. No one has nailed Rei in a way that really satisfies me, Misato is too gravelly, and Shinji is just funky. I can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but the line delivery just feels awkward. In addition to the strange decision for a new cast, it also came with some maltreatment of the former actors. The director and voice for Misato had originally promised to keep the cast informed about what was happening with this new streamed version of EVA, but failed to do so and even, as we know, went behind their backs to create an entirely new cast. Now this doesn't mean you should go harass the voice actors. They performed to the best of their ability. This is all on the staff of Netflix, not the cast. Speaking of the Netflix staff, let's get into what I'm talking about with the title of this video: the changing of the script. My frustrations can be summed up with two specific instances, so I'll be looking directly at those. The first is what some would consider nitpicking, but quite honestly, I believe this distinction plays an important role in conveying a more efficient and effective meaning to the audience. A black object will always stand out on a white background, and conversely, a white object will stand out on a black background. And this simple visual concept can be applied in a literary sense to give things more weight. This brings us to my first issue: the hospital scene of the end of Evangelion. The original subtitles translate the self-reflection scene in which Shinji performs an abhorrent act to be, "I'm so fucked up." However, the new dub and subtitles have changed it so that Shinji instead says, "I'm the lowest of the low." Now, besides disrupting the flow of a mature movie with very PG content, this plays a greater role in the delivery of this scene. Taking the idea of my black and white metaphor, we should look at dialogue throughout Evangelion. It's a series of meditative, descriptive, ambiguous, and complex dialogue and messaging. That is exactly why the original version of this scene stands out so much. In a constant atmosphere of complexity, the audience is delivered a clear-cut, to-the-point address of a morally terrible act: "I'm so fucked up." There's an amount of rawness this conveys, not only because of its nature of sticking out among the rest of the dialogue in the series, but is also a departure from Shinji's usual demeanor. While usually subscribing to polite and non-confrontational mannerisms and language, this turnaround of expression gives the scene even more weight. That's what's frustrated me so much about "I'm the lowest of the low." It seems contemplative and docile, almost a passing remark from any other movie, and it fails to convey the same emotions that the original, bombastically confrontational dialogue does. My second and even more frustrating problem with this new version of EVA is one shared with many on every online platform ever. They absolutely butchered the relationship between Shinji and Kaworu. In doing so, the staff at Netflix has failed to grasp even the slightest bit of understanding of Evangelion, and especially Shinji. What Netflix has specifically changed is an incredibly significant moment. Instead of the iconic "it means I love you" scene, they have replaced love with like. Now, while I've noticed this trend of mitigating words like love to be popular with official subtitles, given the context of this situation and the supposed care that the platform had advertised to be putting into the series, you would think that they would understand the significance and the delineation between the two words, but apparently even that has escaped them. The impact of this is further extrapolated as Shinji reflects on these words, the original being, Kaworu said that he loved me, and it was the first time someone told me they loved me. Instead, in the new version, Shinji says, Kaworu said I was worthy of his grace, and that's the first time anybody's ever said they liked me. Ever. So why is this important? Well, first of all, it mitigates the intense feelings that Shinji has for Kaworu. Liking and loving are very different things, and this differentiation should be especially kept in mind for something like Evangelion, where emotions play a forefront role. The fact that Shinji loves and is loved by a boy that he just met speaks so much more to the emotional drought that he has experienced throughout life, and he is now being met with love in an overwhelming state. The fact that it's coming from a boy is also a significant aspect, as he has never shown any interest in them before. This creates even more questions for Shinji's character, and weaves a more complex portrayal of someone, whereas the new version speaks to a practically platonic level of affection. The weight of this is not carried over into the new version, because Shinji has experienced the concept of being liked plenty. The modern version of this scene literally contradicts the events that have occurred in the series. Misato, Rei, Asuka, and at times even his father, while complex relationships, have still resulted in moments of platonic affection towards Shinji, but this idea further gives credence to the original dialogue. Yes, Shinji has had positive moments with these characters, but he's also had plenty of negative and ambiguous situations come about from his friendships with them. With all the girls he has interacted with, he has given out and received some level of love, but it is mixed into a murky amalgamation of emotions because of the difficulty that others and Shinji himself have in expressing their feelings. Contrast this with the new love from a boy that is straightforward, non-circumstantial, and pure in nature. This treatment is obviously alluring to Shinji because it is his expectation of love, and he is now, finally, receiving it. This is what makes this difference of liking and loving so important, because it completely alters the dynamic that Shinji and Kaworu have in addition to the immense implications it has for his development as a character, and for the interactions he has with others. In addition, it gives future scenes more weight, such as Shinji having to eventually kill Kaworu. Instead of having to kill a new friend, as would be the case in the new version, the original instead places Shinji in a horrible circumstance of having to murder the one source of unconditional love he has ever had in his life. His escape from the torturous treatment of his father and the convoluted relationships he has with the other girls, a thing to him that is possibly the only source of happiness he will ever find. Neon Genesis Evangelion is a special series. From its literary significance that revolutionized not just the mecha genre, but anime as a whole, to the cultural zeitgeist it has become in the anime community as a rite of passage for many. Netflix promised that exact community so much with this victory over the purgatorial world of streaming rights, and yet delivered a final product that not only betrays those originally involved with the series, but fails to exemplify the meaning present in the original, and the amazing, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
It all comes